Okay, so we are live, and welcome everyone to the first Boost Conversations event. I'm really excited to be able to present our first speaker as Alex Heron. When I first spoke to Alex, I had no idea that this would be our first live event and that this is the form it would take, and this is what she'd be talking about. But as our conversation went on, it just became really clear that her experiences within university and within education as a whole, and then with the DSA, was just something that I think everybody needed to hear and have a conversation about. So that's why we kind of named it Boost Conversations, and why we're really pleased to have Alex agree to be our first speaker and to speak to you guys. For those of you that don't know, Alex has a first class philosophy degree and a master's in visual communication from York St John University. She's the founder of Breadth Spanning the Spectrum, which is an autism acceptance analog photography project, which has been featured in loads of press outlets. She's also a published photographer who's appeared in Vogue Italia, and now as a neurodiversity public speaker and even a National Diversity Awards Positive Role Model nominee 2022. So that's a really brief introduction. You don't need to hear much from me tonight. Alex is going to take you through a presentation, and then there'll be some time for question and answers at the end. So I'm going to kind of make my way off screen, and I'm going to put Alex up and hand over.
Hello. Thank you for that introduction. It always makes me cringe a tiny bit when I hear like positive things about myself, but that was really nice. So I'm, like Tom said, I'm Alex. I'm 25 and I'm an analog photographer. So I work primarily on film, like not video, like film cameras. And I kind of started because I think in pictures, and I think a lot of autistic people do this. So pictures to me was like the natural way of expressing myself when sometimes I couldn't find words. And I also really liked film photography because I liked to go in the dark room because nobody could come in and it was dark. So that's kind of where it started and has taken me to places I never thought I would go. So I'm just going to basically say a little bit about my life as an autistic girl that's been through mainstream education, and talk about a few of my experiences with that. Because I think, especially with autistic women, sometimes those experiences aren't spoken about, and the experience of autistic women is sometimes a little bit more invisible. So, as you can see, my special interest has always been animals, and I think that's actually one of the reasons why my diagnosis was quite late, because girls, when like autistic girls, sometimes their special interests can be seen as like normal. So animals, for a girl to be really interested in animals is not really seen as abnormal. Not that being autistic is abnormal, but it wasn't really picked up that it was anything more than just me being interested in animals. But from a really young age, I was just obsessed with animals, really interested, and that's all I wanted to talk about. I'd read books and books about animals, and it was only when I got older that was kind of picked up as one of my special interests. And I think this is quite common for a lot of autistic people. When I received my diagnosis when I was 16, when you actually look back on my life as growing up, the dots kind of connect and you think, oh, I can't believe that was never picked up. So for example, these are pictures of me with my younger sister, Abby, when she was a baby. And if you look back at every picture of me with Abby as a baby, pretty much like 90% of the pictures, I have my hands over my ears. And I even remember now, I was so scared of my sister until she was about 2 or maybe even 3, because the noise of her crying was so hideous to me. Like, it made my body hurt. And I remember being absolutely terrified of her. So anytime I was around her, my hands would be over my ears all the time. And when we were looking back at the pictures, and it was just in every picture, I was like, how did no one see? And then obviously I spent my time with animals rather than people a lot of the time. Although as a primary school age child, I don't think my difficulties with friendships were really there, because even now I get on with children really well, because I don't think there are those unwritten rules that come into play as you turn into an adult. When I was in primary school, people said what they meant, and there was no issue with that. It was kind of when I got to sort of year 6, I found that I was upsetting people more, and people were upsetting me more. And I think it's because I've always been very direct in what I say, and it's never meant to be hurtful. But I think as people grow up, words become more hurtful, and I would find myself upsetting people, and then I'd be worried about upsetting people. So over the summer holidays, when I went to school in year 7, it felt like everyone had been given this like secret social memo that I was never given. So everyone kind of learned this new way of interacting with each other, and I didn't, and I found that really difficult. So apart from, I did really struggle with change in primary school, but apart from that, I don't think there was anything really obvious that maybe it was something more than just anxiety about change and the love of animals. When I joined secondary school, my mum absolutely ensured I would be bullied because I looked like this. So basically, I hated change. So I wore my hair in these plaits every single day since I had hair, and I wore clogs to school, and I wore this Piglet rucksack because I liked Piglet. And I joined school and I realised actually this is not what other people are wearing. And without being autistic, I was definitely going to be bullied, but add autism on top of that, and it was not good. So I remember really distinctly one day I went into the toilets and I thought, if I rip this rucksack, then my mum's going to have to buy me another one, and I'll like get a more cool one. So I ripped it, and then I went home and I went, oh mum, you'll never guess what, I'm really sorry, but my rucksack ripped. And she went, oh, it's okay. And she got a roll of duct tape and pulled it out and duct taped the rucksack. So now I was walking around school with these plaits, a kilt, and bottle green tights with a duct taped Piglet rucksack and extremely loud clogs. So I wasn't set up for a particularly easy time. I also did get braces. So aside from aesthetics, when you threw autism into that, which was difficult. So I remember really distinctly, we were taking mock GCSE exams, and it was my English language mock exam. And it said, read this leaflet about horses and write down what you have learned about horses from this leaflet. And I wrote down, I have not learned anything about horses from this leaflet because I already knew all those things. And for me, that wasn't me trying to be smart or arrogant or rude. I genuinely hadn't learned anything because I already knew those things. Whereas being an undiagnosed autistic girl, teachers took that as me sitting for 3 hours in an exam and trying to be funny. I'd have my English teacher actually said to me once, Alex, do you want to hand out these sheets? And I said, no. And it wasn't because I was trying to be rude again. I genuinely thought they were asking me, did I want to hand those out? So there were things like that happened that I would get in a lot of trouble for. And I found friendships really difficult. And I found maintaining friendships. I tended to have very intense, short friendships. And I would find it very difficult when I look back, and I look back honestly, I found it very difficult to have a friend and then that friend have other friends, because it felt like that wasn't right, and that wasn't how it was supposed to be. And it was really difficult because I felt like the relationship was always changing, and I ended up sort of isolating myself because I felt like this isn't right. I'm just not built for friendships. So that's been quite hard, I think, for me to think about why friendships were so hard to me, and I've had to think about it a lot. So I ended up sort of, when it got to age 16, trying to make friends with anybody, regardless of their impression on me. So I ended up making friends with people that maybe necessarily didn't want friendship out of me, but I was so desperate to have a friend and so desperate to find my place that I'd never found, that it didn't matter if I actually thought someone was a nice person. It just mattered that I had a friend. So secondary school was really difficult. Never mind, like, the lights at school were absolutely hideous. They actually made my teeth and my skin hurt in the classroom. I also got very upset about people touching my things. So I'd be sat in lesson, and if anyone touched my stuff or moved my stuff, would cause a meltdown and would be really difficult for me. So obviously then the more that you react, the more people are going to do things, because it's funny when you're a kid and you're at school. But it wasn't funny for me, although I don't like harbour any resentment, because people are kids and that's what kids do. And funnily enough, after I was diagnosed, I feel like it got harder. I was diagnosed when I was 16. Like I said before, I was attending CAMS because I was truanting school a lot, because I found the environment, the lights and the noise of being in the classroom difficult. I took things very literally, which was completely humiliating. And I was really lonely. And I'd made friends with people that weren't objectively, just weren't good people. So I was in CAMS, and I saw a child psychologist, and within minutes they just said, "Oh, we need to send you for an autism assessment. I think you're autistic." And my parents came in, and when it was discussed and I'd been through the assessment, my parents were like, "I can't believe we hadn't seen this before," and a lot of things made sense. But when I was diagnosed, I was told that I should keep it a secret because it could have significant and detrimental career ramifications for the future. And I think when you're 16 and a doctor's telling you that there's something so terrible about yourself, that would mean no matter how hard you work, you're completely unemployable to anybody. So you have to keep it a secret. I mean, that does quite a lot to how you view yourself, because you kind of think, I'm so terrible that there's this big secret about me that these adults are telling me I can't tell anyone, so it must be really bad. So I think that had quite a negative effect on me, and it meant that I didn't access, especially in school, the services that I needed. Like, I could have had somebody sit with me in lessons, but I didn't, because I felt like this is such a terrible thing. I need to do everything I can to hide this. And that was very much the narrative that I was told. So I would go to these like secret meetings with the autism support at my school, especially when I was in sixth form, to talk about coping strategies, but I never really accessed the help that I needed. And in sixth form, I mean, I didn't really go to sixth form because of these issues, but in sixth form, like the one class a week that I would actually go to, I found that really hard, and I really didn't have any friends at all. When I was in year 11, the school actually tried to stop me doing most of my GCSEs because I'd got U's in all of my mock exams, and I was truanting a lot because of anxiety and just hating the sensory environment of being at school. and being incredibly lonely. And they said that they'd enter me in my functional skills exams, which are basically adding up shopping lists and reading letters. And they're basically just tests that you can take to survive in the world. But my mum really fought for me to be entered into the same GCSEs as my peers. And eventually the school said, on your head be it. So I actually came out of school at this point and didn't really go. And because I was truanting, so it was quite unsafe for me to be there from the school's point of view, because I would just run away and it was not safe. But my granddad, who's in his 80s, enrolled himself on like teacher training, and he bought the syllabuses for all of my GCSEs. And for 2 hours every day for 2 years, my granddad tutored me for every single one of my GCSEs. And on results day, I went and picked up my results and I got 14 A's. So that was the first time I really felt like I've been told I'm thick, and I've been told that I'm unemployable, and I've been told that this really bad thing about me, and I wasn't even going to be allowed to do my GCSEs. But someone believed in me, and someone told me that I'm not thick, and someone told me that I'm capable, and I did it, and I got 14 A's. And then at my A levels, I didn't really go back to school. I would go in occasionally, but I found it really difficult because the bullying was quite bad by then, and just was really, really difficult, and I was really lonely. So my granddad tutored me again, and the same thing happened with my A levels. And I actually applied to the University of Nottingham because it was Russell Group, and York St John was my second choice. But when I visited York St John, I really loved it because it was quiet, it was close to my home, it was small, and I really liked the support staff there, and I felt that it was somewhere that I could thrive. But I actually got into the University of Nottingham, so I was really upset. So I withdrew from the University of Nottingham, and I deferred for a year and went to York St John instead. And in that year, I worked at a horse shop near my house, and I actually felt like that did a lot for me because I learned so many social skills and independent skills from doing that. So my granddad is somebody that genuinely, without him, I wouldn't have gone to university. And he is somebody that believed in me no matter what anybody else said. And he believed in me no matter what the school said. And he taught me so much. And every time I felt I was stupid, he'd just say, "You're not stupid. We need to find a way to communicate with your brain. And everybody has a different brain. And school only works for one type of brain." And I think that's so true. And I feel so sad because so many autistic people and neurodivergent people go through life genuinely believing that they're stupid because they didn't fit into a school environment that was never built to suit them. School's never been built to allow neurodivergent people to thrive. So they go through life believing they're stupid. And I'm so lucky, I'm privileged that I had a granddad that was alive and able to do that for me, and parents that were able to fight for me. But so many people don't have that and really do believe in their life and throughout their life that they're incapable. So I'm so lucky, but I'm also so passionate about the fact that autistic people slip through the net unless they have an army of family there fighting their corner. So I went on to York St John Uni, and I did a degree in philosophy, which maybe sounds quite strange because I was talking about how I take things very literally. But actually, I took philosophy because I felt it was the only skill I ever needed in my life, because I love logic and I like everything to be to make sense to me. And philosophy, all it is taking the most crazy, obscure, ununderstandable theories and concepts and making them make sense, and applying logic to illogical concepts, and applying order to things that are completely abstract. So if I can apply that logic and reasoning to everything in life that doesn't make sense, then that's really valuable to me. So I really enjoyed it, and I really thrived there. I thought York St John was amazing for me. So I enrolled on the early autistic students were invited to move in early. And I did live in Halls, but it's only about 40 minutes from my house. So I was able to regularly go home and see my dog and my horses. So that was really good. And I did this early start program where you moved in a week early, so I could get all my stuff in before everybody else moved in, and I could kind of acquaint myself with the surroundings. And I was really lucky because somebody on my course was also autistic, was on that early start, so I'd already made a friend, and it was nice to have another autistic friend because I'd never met anyone autistic really, except one person in my school, but they were non-verbal, so I never really had the chance to sort of make friends with them. And I really enjoyed the early start program as well, because they took my timetable of all my lectures and they walked me to each lecture room, and I could take pictures of that lecture room before the week started, so I knew exactly where I was going. And that actually helped me make friends, because I find making friends really difficult at the start, and I don't know what to talk about and I don't know what to say. Whereas there were people looking for the lecture hall and I knew where it was, so I could say, I know where it is, and that would kind of start the friendship of conversation. So I made lots of friends in the first week, because everyone wanted to meet me before the lecture because I knew where it was. So that was also really helpful. And I went and met with, my mum came, and we met with Rachel Larman, who at the time was like head of disability services at York St John. And that's when we were talking about sort of what support I would need. And that's when obviously the DSA came up, and I was really adverse to this. One, because I'd never told anyone I was autistic, and I didn't want anyone to think I was autistic. And two, I find like admin and forms and things really difficult. And I find that, I know that's a trait of being autistic, but I just find it so overwhelming. I also knew I would have to speak to people, and I would have to speak to an assessor. And to me, that's just like absolute hell. I don't want to have to think about what I'm going to say. Like, I'm already just moved to uni, which is the most stressful thing I've ever done in my entire life. Everything's changed. Everything's different. I'm having meltdowns every day because, I mean, it's not because of uni, but just for an autistic person, my whole life's been uprooted and everything's different. So that was really hard. And then the thought of having to go to an assessment centre or speak to an assessor on top of that, I was just like, do you know what? I would rather just not have it. But I spoke with my mum, and we talked over sort of pros and cons, and we thought it's probably best that I do it because I'm entitled to these things, and it's important that people do claim it, I think, because there's a need for it, and we shouldn't not access it because we just find it too stressful. There's a need for it, and I was lucky that my mum really helped me with that. One thing I found really difficult with the DSA was I find sometimes communicating my needs quite difficult, and I think a lot of the time that's because, especially with autistic girls, I'm sure many women will relate to this, but every time you kind of voice your needs, you're labelled like a brat or a diva or a madam, a drama queen. And those are things I've been told I am all my life. And like I'd have meltdowns. I mean, I'd have like meltdowns in shopping centres at like 16, crying, screaming, sitting on the floor, and people would be like, that spoiled drama queen brat. And looking back, I'm thinking that's not like normal behaviour for a 16-year-old girl. And to be called drama queen and things, it kind of imprints in you that you can never articulate your needs because that makes you the problem, and you need to just be quiet and not make a fuss. But we did go through that. I found it really difficult because they kind of said, what do you need? And I'm like, well, what is there? Like, but what do you need? So they weren't saying, oh, we could, like, these are all the things, and which one do you want? And I understand that the DSA can't really do that, because then I could just be like, all of them. But it was kind of like, because I find communicating my needs quite difficult, I sometimes wonder, was there things that could have been offered to me that would have helped me a lot that I wasn't offered because I didn't necessarily articulate that need? But the main problem I had was the absolute fear and shame of having to share my report with somebody that then I'm going to have to speak to. Because obviously my report was done when I was 16, and it was a very difficult time in my life, socially and with school. And I grew up a little bit since then, and I learned, since I accessed some support from my autism, I learned a lot more about communication and how to regulate my meltdowns. But there are things in that report that are really things I feel incredible shame about, and things I had done that in meltdowns that really fill me with immense shame. And knowing that someone was going to read that and then I'd have to have a conversation with them made me feel completely humiliated. And I sort of said to my mum at the time, imagine if you were having a meeting with someone and before you met them, they had a document that had the worst things you've ever done written on there, and they read it. Like, how would you feel going into that? And I think that's when my mum realised how it kind of makes me feel really small and defensive. And when I had meltdowns and I like threw a chair, that's not me. And I'm embarrassed that I did that. And it kind of was enough to make me like not want to go through a video essay, because I just was completely like, I don't want people to think I'm this person that goes around throwing chairs or like crying over like can't make a decision of what to have for lunch, so I like sit on the floor and cry. Like it was so humiliating for me. And I've since then, obviously now, like I've learned more from speaking to other autistic people. I now have like a letter by my doctor that just says she's autistic. So I don't have to every time like give somebody my full report, but I found that completely humiliating and difficult for me. But I did, in the end, I got a recording device to record all my lectures, and a parking permit and a printer, which I think, and some software for my recording that could transcribe my recording of the lectures, which I found really useful, because in lectures I sometimes found like the environment of being in there very overwhelming and difficult, and I would obviously sit through it because I was just generally so much more comfortable at uni. So that actually having that to be able to read over afterwards was really helpful for me. So after my undergraduate, I got a first class degree, and I got offered a university scholarship to do a master's, and I changed master's from my like degree, and I did visual communication, which you needed a graphic design degree of a 2-1 to do it, but I told them I'll be able to do it, and because my granddad had given me that confidence, and I got it, and I came out with a distinction, so I was really pleased with that. And then it came to getting a job, and I was really lucky at uni that I made a really amazing group of friends, and I told them I was autistic, which was like a huge weight off my shoulders, and I was kind of learning to accept myself as autistic. But when it came to getting a job, it was really difficult. So I would apply for jobs and write on the application that I was autistic, and I would never get an interview. Or I would apply for a job and I wouldn't write I was autistic on the application, and I'd get an interview, but the feedback I kept getting was your body language was closed, defensive, not good eye contact. So it was really, really hard, because I was kind of damned if I do and damned if I don't. And I was just getting really frustrated. Like, only 16% of autistic people are in full-time employment. and we have so much to offer. I just need to be given a chance to do that. So I kind of thought, how can I do that? Well, I think in pictures. The world makes sense to me in pictures. So I started this project called Breadth Spanning the Spectrum, and I would take pictures on analog film. I think because then it becomes less about the pictures, because you're not changing who you are from the back of the camera. You can't see the pictures straight away. So it's about somebody just being who they truly are. And I kind of travel the country and take pictures of autistic people from all walks of life, contributing to the world, to show and telling their stories, to show that actually we're such a fundamental part of society, and we contribute to every part of this society, and we just need to be given a chance. And the narrative that you see of autism in the TV is not real life. So, I mean, Ray is on here. She's a foster carer. Monroe, he's a DJ. We've got Sebastian, who learnt to walk after this life-changing surgery in America. Obviously got Alex Manners, who's a good friend of mine and has mentored me a lot with speaking and having the confidence to speak. And I found him like a really inspirational friend of mine. And Eve, she's a singer and songwriter, and I met her through my project, and now I'm moving to London in August and we're going to be living together. David, he was diagnosed in his 60s and he's a university lecturer. Simon, he was diagnosed in his 40s and he is, or was, before he retired, the detective superintendent and head of major crime for Manchester Police. Ben, he is a nuclear cybersecurity professional. Georgia, she's an actress. Rory, he's an international DJ. So we're like contributing to all walks of life, and it's been so inspirational to meet all these autistic people and tell their stories. And my aim is to eventually get it made into a book and given to schools and organizations, to mainly be given to people going through a diagnosis. Because when I was 16, and my parents as well, kind of grieved for a life that they thought I was going to have and wouldn't necessarily have anymore. And it was so lonely because I'd never seen anyone like me. And I thought my life's not going to be how I'd always imagined it to be. But if I'd had a book with all these stories of these autistic people that have gone on to thrive and contribute to society, I'd have thought, actually, I'm going to be okay. And that's what I want this book to do. I want to show that school's not good, but it's going to be okay, and you're going to find your place in this world. So some of the pictures were published by Vogue Italia, which was a really proud achievement of mine. And I was invited to speak at the photography and video show last year, and I'm going to be speaking there again this year, which was an amazing achievement as well, because I got to meet so many photographers that I've looked up to for all my life. And I've always been really into photography and looking up to photographers, because photos are the only thing that really made sense to me when I was younger. And then after that, I kind of fell into public speaking, and I actually was invited back to my university to do a talk there, which was like such an honor for me. And I did it with my lecturer, Esther, who's had such a massive impact on my life and everything I do. And I think everyone has that one kind of teacher or lecturer that really impacts them, and Esther's that for me. So to do that with her was like such a big honor for me. And then this is just, I just put this in actually because I met Rankin, who is a photographer that I've basically been a stan of for my entire life. I met him at the photography and video show, and we kind of chatted about my project, and he invited me to go down to his studio and do a couple of weeks work experience there. And from that, I've just been offered a proper internship with him, and I've just signed the contract for that now. Actually, I signed it yesterday. And the funny thing about this is, when I was at school, when I was 16, our homework for photography was to take pictures in the style of Rankin, because we were studying Rankin for that term. And I've got this book and it's full of Rankin's work and me writing about him. And because we'd had to take pictures of people in our class in the style of Rankin outside school hours, I didn't have any friends, so I didn't have anyone to take pictures of. And I was in trouble for not doing it. And I explained this to my teacher when he pulled me into his office, and he said to me, and I remember it like a movie in my head, like with sound, and I can remember the smell of the room, like it's so ingrained in my head. He said, "You're a disappointment to your family, you're a disappointment to the school. I hear your mum's heart breaking on the phone every time I talk to her, and you're never going to get anywhere in life." And he said that to me when we were studying Rankin, and now I'm employed by Rankin. So that was quite a good feeling, because I thought, actually, like, I want to say to that girl there, like, just you wait. So that's something that I felt a little bit smug about, I have to say. And then these are my like links. If you want to follow me on anything, I'm on LinkedIn and I'm on Instagram, and then you can see my Breadth project on the website. I'm going to New York in a few days to do some more shooting for the project, so that's really exciting. Got my first solo flight, which I'm a bit stressed about, but it'll be fine. But thank you very much to everyone who listened.
And thank you, Alex. That was, I think, a really engaging talk. I certainly was glued to it, and I knew what you were actually going to talk about. So that's brilliant. Thank you very much. There should be a comments and a questions part of the screen that you guys can view. So feel free to put any comments in the chat, put any questions in the chat, and I can put them up on screen, and I can put them to Alex if you want anything to be answered. There's one thing that stuck with me that I took out of that, and that was something your granddad said when he said, "We just need to find a way to communicate with your brain."
Yeah.
Because those of you that are on the call know me. I spent 10 years teaching in education in various needs, and I think as assessors, this is something we can think about when we're perhaps thinking about technology that we recommend, and how it should be so unique to that individual that we are assessing and that we're working with at that point in time. So that's just something that really stuck out for me. And then again, as an assessor, something that I took away from that was just thinking about that sharing of evidence prior to school aspect of things, and actually how sometimes we ask things of people, like you say, that are completely exposing, or the bare naked truth. And when you said to your mum, would you want everyone to know all the bad stuff about you? Well, certainly wouldn't be dragging up my my stories from school and everything like that. So that definitely really resonated with me. But if anyone does have any questions, like I say, or comments, you can put them in the chat. I've not had anything come through just yet. So I think that's worth showing David. So David's amazing story. You've done so well. Thank you for sharing it. It'd be really interesting to know if any of the assessors on the call, anyone from within the DSA, has any questions about the process that Alex went through. Obviously, one part of the reasons of having Alex on to talk was to try and perhaps inform assessors and maybe improve future practice. And so if there's any kind of specific questions that people wanted to ask, or just comments, I'm going to have to keep going through these one by one, but they got Tim, emotional listen, DSA let you down. And I know these are coming through. We've got
these are so nice.
And, I think everybody listening is genuinely so thankful for you being able to share as candidly as you did, because I really appreciate that. A lot of that was probably not easy to talk about, or to kind of go through the process of putting into text or even into words. So, I think the biggest thing is a big thank you from everyone for joining us and for doing.
I think that's just a pro of like being forced to go to therapy. You just when you've been to therapy, I just think this talk is just like everything that my therapy sessions have been, just condensed, but instead of I have to pay you for it, you pay me.
So we have got a question from Amy, who I know is an assessor. Did you have any specialist helpers, like a mentor or anything like that, that was given to you through the DSA? And I guess, what was that experience like?
Yeah, so my first year, because I'd moved away from home, that was really difficult for me. So I met with Rachel Larman. I think it was weekly, and then I got another lady when Rachel left, who I forgot her name, who was really nice, and that was every week, and then we dropped it to, I think, every 2 weeks, and that was for my first year, and we would just kind of go with my timetable and the thing, like my, it's not homework at uni, essays that I had to do and sort of prioritize them, because that's something that I found really difficult, is organizing my time. So she helped with that, and also she helped me with communicating with my lecturers, which was something I found really difficult. So she kind of acted as kind of like a middleman, and helping me to make the right to do emails and to speak or set up meetings with my lecturers. So, but after that, in second year and third year, I actually decided that I didn't need a mentor anymore, because I just felt so included at uni and valued, that I felt like the confidence to do things on my own. So yeah, I did have it in first year and found it really useful, but in second and third year, I still was able to go to learning support throughout second and third year and my master's in times when I needed more help, and they would help me, but I didn't need to regularly see my mentor anymore.
That's great. And I think that's a perfect example of how a mentor can work for someone like yourself, because university does go quite quickly if you're thinking like 3 years, and to gradually build up your confidence and ability to be independent enough to say, I've really taken on board everything in that first year, the strategies and interventions that we've worked on, and actually I feel confident enough to go it alone.
Yeah,
that could only have put you into a good place when going into, obviously you went on to do your masters, but now in the big wider world and everything you're going to do. So that's great to hear that was a really helpful tool, because obviously, like I say, as assessors, we recommend stuff a lot of the time, and we don't always then get a window into what the student experience is once
I was so lucky with York St John. Like, they were so good, and I really liked the fact that when we were talking about whether I needed a mentor anymore, when we were going into second year, it wasn't like you have to decide and that's your decision. They just said, why don't we just do it on a trial basis, and if you want to, you can have it back again. And it's not like you have to decide and then you're on your own from here, which was really good for me, because I could take things week by week. And there were periods like when things were more difficult that I did go back to having my mentor every week, but then I would stop again because I was okay again. So it was really good.
That's great. And I think that kind of ties in with what Tim has just asked about the choice of uni being a big factor for you. And, York St John, you mentioned it was 40 minutes drive from your house, somewhere you felt really comfortable, but actually that you actually got into Nottingham and still made a choice around other areas. So Tim, any advice from students on how to actually find the best place for them?
So my advice is, don't take school's advice, genuinely, because schools care about getting students into Russell Group unis because it makes them look like they're a better school. And honestly, when I decided to go to York St John, I had so much resistance from even my own family. Like, what are you doing? Why are you going? Like, my mum and dad were really supportive, but like other people in the family were like, what are you doing? Like, you've got into one of the top unis in the world. Like, why would you do that? And like my mum and me would say, what is the point in me going to Nottingham where I would be so miserable? It's huge. It's so anonymous. I don't have the support. And I drop out or I get a third. Whereas York St John, somewhere where I'll grow in confidence, I will thrive, I will be happy. Yeah, it's not Russell Group, but does that matter if you're getting a first class degree and you're happy and you're confident and you've grown? And that's what I would say is, don't listen to academic snobbery. It is not important. Going to a Russell Group uni, unless you want to be some a person that stays in uni, like a professor or like some stockbroker, maybe not even a stockbroker, but majority of the time, it doesn't matter where you go to uni. 99.9% of the time, it doesn't matter. The thing that matters is the grade you get, whether you thrive as a person. Going to uni, especially for autistic people, is not just about the grade you get. It's about growing as a person and building that confidence up and learning to trust yourself to be on your own. And don't listen to academic snobbery, because it's not important. And do you know what? For every job interview that I've been to and have not got the job, one question I have not ever been asked is, where did you go to uni? The only thing they care about is what I did and what grade I got, and that's it. They've never once asked where I got it from. So don't listen to the school when they tell you to go to Russell Group. Don't listen to that. Look at places and where you feel comfortable and where you feel happy and where it makes you feel valued. That's where you need to go. And if it's the worst university in the UK, go there, because that's where you'll be happy.
Yeah. And I think that completely goes with it being such an individual decision for individual needs. You know, there will be, if you're person A, there will always be a person B that actually finds Nottingham is right for them, and that meets their needs, and that's where they're comfortable. So it really going back to the individualness of what you're most comfortable with and what's going to work for you. Amazing. One thing I was just going to ask is, with the DSA process, I love when you kind of mentioned they asked you what you wanted, but you had no idea what you could actually have.
Yeah.
Thinking back now, was there anything you now know that you could have had that would have been really useful, or things that kind of weren't around that that might have been useful and helped you through the course?
Well, I was quite lucky because obviously I had my friend that I'd made an early start program, so we were kind of able to compare notes with that. I think he got more software on the computer, and he got something called Dragon. I don't know whether that's because he's autistic, though. He might be dyslexic as well, but that was where you could kind of talk to your computer instead of typing. And I think I would have found that so much easier, because I get very overwhelmed. And if I can just, especially, I can't organize and prioritize tasks. And I think having something like that would have been easier for me to make a start on some work. So I think maybe that would have been useful. And I think maybe software like Booost to prioritize my task.
I wasn't going to say anything, but when you said about organization and prioritization, I wasn't going to say it. I wasn't going to go fishing. Everyone heard it. It's fine. Alex has just asked, didn't find any of the support that you received through the DSA. You have also then gone on to use it after university. So maybe this might fall in the camp of software that you might have kept with you, or.
I definitely have used my recorder. Not like it's like a voice recorder. Yeah. I use that a lot still, especially when I'm doing my projects. I'm like recording people's stories sometimes that can't necessarily articulate the thoughts on paper. I still use my printer, but the main thing I think I got through the DSA was the mentorship that I got in first year was amazing. And it wasn't like when I was at school, I was given like cards that you would show up a happy face or a sad face and stuff, and it made me feel like, I don't know, I was really dumb, and it made me feel like I was very young. And when I was at uni, the mentorship I got never made me feel like that, and it never made me feel like a baby, and that was really important to me. And it gave me confidence, and it never made me feel like an other. And that's what happened at school. So I think the main thing I took from the DSA was the confidence that I got from my mentorship in first year.
Cool. And another question has just come through from Hayley. Alex, you recalled the transition event at your university being valuable and moving in early. Is there anything else you feel disability services could offer to new students?
Yeah, I mean, I was so lucky with York St John because I picked that they're like notoriously have really good like learning support. But I think generally across universities, one thing that could be so useful is like a video walkthrough of the campus and through the halls. And I like when I said I think in pictures, I know so many autistic people do. To have pictures and videos of where you're going to be takes so much anxiety away. So if they could do like a booklet of pictures of where you're going to be and your university, and maybe even better like a video of this is where the canteen is, this is where things, it just makes things so much easier. And even like halls, if you could do a video or picture route of your route from halls to university, I think would be amazing. And then maybe pictures where possible of the learning support staff that you might see would be really amazing.
I think that's a really useful answer. And I guess in today's world of technology with drones and everything like that should be really doable.
Yeah, and it's such a like cheap and thing to do that makes life so much easier and anxiety taken away.
Yeah. A question from Lindsay: have you had any support through access to work at all?
No, I'm sick of forms and things taking too long, and I just think if I'm not employed by the time access to work goes through, then I'm doing something wrong. So I will be employed by then. I'll be 85 and retired.
I mean, like I say, everything you've said, I wish I had a transcription of this event, because there's so many snippets I would take and just kind of put on my wall to kind of look at every day, like motivational things. There's so much I wanted to take out of it. And I can see just through the comments and the questions, just how, like I say, grateful everyone is. We've got one more come through here, just from Dom, who said, the doctor who said your autism would hinder you later in life should have their license revoked.
You know, I had a GP say that to me very recently, actually, when I asked for a letter instead of my report, because my friend who does speaking, he had told me that I could do that. So I rang up and asked for a letter, and he said to me, this was only about 10 months ago, said to me, you don't, like, people are going to make judgments on you, and employers will make judgments on you, and that's just the way the world is. And so GPs are saying that now. And that makes me sad, because when you say that to a child, I can't tell you what that does to them.
And I think that just shows us how far we've got to go. And I know everybody on the call, from a disability background or as a practitioner or as an assessor, is passionate about trying to move things forward. And it's upsetting when you hear that, it's kind of still going on, and it just is a reminder that we've got so much to do as an industry. Alex has just said thank you for asking that question. She's going to pass it on. I know Hayley's linked to university, so you may well see this coming through in next year or so. We are running close to the end time now, so if anyone has any final questions they wanted to put across, please do so. If there's anything you wanted to perhaps not put up and wanted to ask perhaps in a little bit more detail in private, feel free to email me directly and I can pass them on to Alex, and we can set up a communication that way. But I just think again, on behalf of firstly Boost, and something we're trying to do something different in just having chats and conversations of people that are relevant. Just a massive thank you. I know how well received this is going to be. Again, thank you for speaking so openly. That's the first thing that I know that would not have been easy. And every time I've spoken with you before this call, setting it up, I've just felt more and more excited about it, and it's really even gone beyond that. So it's just a massive thank you. Everyone's saying thank you, and this will be available as a recording for those on the call. We're going to make that available, and you'll get a link to be able to download it and review it. And if you want to go away and tell all your colleagues about it and other people, they will be able to get in touch with us at Boost to access a recording of that as well. So it doesn't really leave me much more to say apart from thank you, everybody, and hope you go on to have a great evening. Hope you've taken lots from it. Alex, I don't know if you want to finish off or just say goodbye.
Just thank you for everyone's kind comments. It really does give me a massive confidence boost and makes me just feel like I'm on the right track. So thank you. And if you want to follow me on LinkedIn, follow me.
Yeah,
follow me.
LinkedIn, Alex Heron. I'm going to follow the Spanning the Breadth of the Spectrum project with a really close eye. I'm desperate to get my hands on the book when it comes out, and I think it could be such a valuable tool. So
yeah, if anyone wants to back the publishing of that book, just let me know.
I'm sure the next time we'll hear about Alex Heron, it's going to be in a much kind of much bigger blown up version of what we're seeing now. I think we're just at the start of your journey.
Hope so.
And we're honored to be a part of it. So thank you, everybody. And I'll get back to some of the other individual questions that are in there now, like yours, Hayley, separately. But have a good rest of your evening, and we'll all catch up soon.
Thank you.
Bye.